In the midnight hours in July 1918, the Imperial Romanovs and their 5 children were forced into a basement to face a firing squad. Bullets and gunpowder filled the tiny room, but it was only when the smoke cleared that the soldiers realised the execution had gone horribly, horribly wrong. Tsar Nicholas II makes most terrible rulers look like saints in comparison. From the moment he was crowned Tsar, his reign was an utter catastrophe. So who was the man who ended the 300-year rule of the House of Romanov? And was he really as bad as they say? Nicholas's disastrous reign killed the Russian imperial family forever, but it's not like the Romanovs' reputation was great to begin with. In 1881, when Nicholas was just 13, revolutionaries attacked his grandfather, Tsar Alexander II. He was travelling back to the Winter Palace when an explosion rocked his carriage. He survived the blast, but when he emerged, another attacker tossed a second explosive at his feet. There was nothing he could do. The blast tore through him. Remarkably, despite the fact he'd lost both legs, Alexander survived long enough to be carried back to the palace, where he succumbed to his injuries in his study. Nicholas and the rest of his family bore witness to Alexander II's gruesome end. He was just a boy, but Nicholas had to watch his grandfather's painful final moments. Little did he know, he would suffer a similar fate before long. But for now, his father became Tsar Alexander III, and Nicholas was suddenly heir to the throne. In 1884, at one of countless royal weddings, Nicholas's eye cast across the crowd and settled on the bride's sister, Princess Alex, his 12-year-old cousin. Alex left Nicholas transfixed. Several years passed between that first meeting and them meeting again, this time on his home court in St. Petersburg. Despite the time that passed, Nicholas was still head over heels for his now slightly more age-appropriate cousin. To his joy, he found Alex reciprocated his feelings. Tsar Alexander III seemed like he was in the prime of his life in his mid-40s, yet not long after he became Tsar, his health started to fail. Pretty soon it became clear that he was not long for this world. The family scrambled to get the soft-skinned Nicholas ready for the throne, but it was too late. With the Tsardom ahead of him, Nicholas needed a wife, stat. He quickly proposed to the love of his life, Princess Alex. She initially said no, because as a Lutheran she didn't want to convert to the Russian Orthodox Church, but eventually decided that he was worth converting for. By the fall of 1894, Tsar Alexander III was out of time, but before he passed, he called his beloved son to his bedside. He knew that Nicholas was nowhere near ready to be Tsar, but he still tried to offer one crucial piece of advice. Listen to any advice given by Sergei Witte, one of the country's keenest political minds. Just 10 days later, the Tsar succumbed to kidney disease. Nicholas's ascension spelled doom for the Russian Empire, but people didn't know that quite yet. They decided the occasion was worthy of celebration, so the court held a massive party the day after the coronation. The government offered free food, drinks, and souvenirs to the entire city of Moscow. Officials chose to hold the celebration at Kodinka Field, the only place nearby that could fit them all. They'd promised the entire crowd of 100,000 people ample food and drink, but whispers started to spread through the mob that there wasn't enough to go around. Desperate citizens began to scramble to get their share, and it didn't take long for things to take a turn for the worse. Pretty soon, hundreds of people were being trampled or suffocated in the mass of hungry Muscovites. By the time the day was out, almost 1,400 people had died. To put that in perspective, That's almost as many people died on the Titanic. Some party, Nicholas. If the Khodinka tragedy was a bad start to Nicholas's rule, what he did next made things even worse. The next day, he attended an extravagant gala for the French ambassador. He was worried he'd offend the French if he skipped it, but that didn't matter to his people. What they saw was their new Tsar partying it up in style right after hundreds of his citizens lost their lives. Russia was a superstitious country back in the 19th century, and after the tragedy, dark rumours started to spread about the new Tsar. People believed the horrific events were an omen of things to come. In fairness, it was an omen of things to come, but that didn't worry Tsar Nicholas one bit. He believed one thing above all: God chose him to be Tsar. He quite literally believed he could do no wrong, and he was so out of touch that he thought everyone else believed the same thing. Nicholas's laughable incompetence was put on display in 1904 when his country went to war with Japan. Every single decision Nicholas made in regard to the Russo-Japanese War was so laughably bad, he left all outside observers totally flabbergasted. Japan handed Russia disastrous defeat after disastrous defeat, and Nicholas was still completely sure he was winning. Eventually, everyone around him begged him to start peace talks, but the Tsar looked at them like they were crazy. It would take a true catastrophe to convince the delusional Nicholas to wave the white flag. The Battle of Tsushima might be one of the worst defeats in history. The Japanese lost 113 men, the Russians lost over 5,000, and 6 battleships, plus 14 more ships, and the Japanese captured over 6,000 of their men. Yet still, Nicholas didn't want to surrender. Luckily, his advisors finally got through to him, and the Tsar finally, begrudgingly, settled for peace. For most rulers, the Battle of Tsushima would be the worst thing to happen in their entire reign. For Nicholas, it was barely the worst thing to happen that year. Just a few months before, a priest and activist named Georgy Gapon let Nicholas and his government know that he was going to lead a procession of workers to the Winter Palace to hand a petition to the Tsar. They were going to do it on January 9th, 1905, a date that would forever live in infamy as Bloody Sunday. The Workers' March started very peacefully. Gapon and his compatriots locked arms and walked through the streets carrying flags, singing hymns, and some even holding up portraits of Nicholas himself. They spoke for the struggling people of the Russian Empire, and they arrived to ask Nicholas to help them. Then Nicholas's forces opened fire. Completely unprovoked, various infantrymen throughout the city started firing into the peaceful crowd before they'd even reached the Winter Palace. By the time the guns lay silent, 92 workers lost their lives and several hundred more suffered horrible wounds. Bloody Sunday shocked people all around the world. To have the Russian army fire upon a peaceful crowd of its own citizens was a new low. The British Prime Minister Ramsay MacDonald called Nicholas a blood-stained creature and a common murderer. Though Imperial Guards apprehended many of the workers' leaders, Gapon himself managed to vanish into the crowd and go into hiding. From his safe house he published a scathing rebuke of the Tsar, calling him sole murderer of the Russian Empire. He placed the blame for the bloodshed directly at Nicholas's feet, and called for the people of Russia to rise up against him. Remember the final piece of advice Nicholas's father gave him before he died? It was simple: listen to Sergei Witte. Well, 1905 was the perfect time to start. That summer, Witte wrote a desperate letter to Nicholas. After the horrible loss to Japan and Bloody Sunday, Russia was on the brink. Witte could see it, and he told Nicholas that without some serious reforms, he was doomed. And Tsar Nicholas II didn't listen. He spent the entire fall hunting and ignoring his duties. In October 1905, Tsar Nicholas finally signed the October Manifesto. The document limited his powers and created the Imperial Duma, basically Russian Congress. So what finally made him have a change of heart? Well, his uncle Nicholas literally threatened to take his own life if he didn't. With the creation of the Duma, Witte became Prime Minister, but his relationship with the Tsar quickly turned tense. Then, a mysterious figure showed up at the Russian court, and Witte finally reached his breaking point. On November 1st, 1905, a scraggly, bearded mystic named Grigory Rasputin showed up at Peterhof Palace. Empress Alexandra was immediately taken with this strange man, and she soon hung on his every word. It wasn't long before Rasputin started giving opinions on political matters. This strange man made Witte extremely suspicious, probably because he'd make pretty much any sane person suspicious. Witte told Nicholas to get rid of the mystic. Nicholas ignored him and sided with his wife, so Rasputin stayed. Another great decision. By 1906, the writing was on the wall. Nothing could save Nicholas from himself. Witte resigned as Prime Minister in April of that year, and without Witte, Nicholas was well and truly doomed. For the first decade of their relationship, Nicholas and his wife only had daughters, leading to a crisis of succession. Finally, in 1906, the couple had a boy, Alexei. However, royal doctors soon realised that he suffered from haemophilia B, a hereditary blood disease. Though treatable today, at the turn of the century, the outlook was much more grim. Doctors had no effective treatments, and it usually led to an early death. Alexei almost certainly got the disease from his great-grandmother, Queen Victoria, who carried the gene mutation that caused it. And because Victoria's children and grandchildren married into almost every noble house in Europe, soon royals all over the continent had the same affliction. It was so widespread that people took to calling it the royal disease. When traditional medicine failed their son, Nicholas and his wife turned to charlatans, mystics, and miracle workers. They were absolutely desperate, and they listened to anyone who they thought might help their boy. That's how a man like Grigory Rasputin, one of history's greatest manipulators, managed to worm his way into the Russian palace. Sergei Witte wasn't the only person who mistrusted Rasputin. He made almost everyone nervous with his creepy vibe and, well, just look at him. All it took was a minor injury to put young Alexei's life in danger, so when he bruised his leg in 1912, it was genuinely a crisis situation. The bleeding wouldn't stop, and soon Alexei started fading away. Doctors tried everything, but there was nothing they could do. Eventually, priests came to give the boy his last rites. Everyone had given up hope, and the Empress frantically ran to Rasputin for help. And a miracle happened. The next day, Alexei's bleeding finally stopped, and he started to recover. If Alexandra listened to Rasputin before, now she took her devotion to the next level. If the Russo-Japanese War taught us anything, it's that Tsar Nicholas II was hopeless when it came to military matters. That's probably why all of his advisors begged him not to enter World War I. To his credit, Nicholas didn't actually want to join the fight, but a complicated web of political alliances forced his hand. When fighting broke out in 1914, Nicholas had no choice but to enter the fray. By the time the war broke out, Germany was a well-oiled machine built for warfare, and Russia was basically fighting back with sticks. It didn't matter how many men Nicholas had, without proper arms or uniforms or vehicles or locomotives, they just couldn't contend with the Germans. When Nicholas's armies made it to East Prussia, they found the Germans ready and waiting. It was a bloodbath. The Germans absolutely annihilated a Russian force that was nearly twice the size. Russia had somehow managed to stick with Nicholas through scandal after scandal after scandal, but World War I was finally the breaking point. Around 1.7 million Russians lost their lives fighting. On top of that, the army had pulled some 15 million men from farms, causing food prices to skyrocket and millions to go hungry. Nicholas returned to St. Petersburg in 1916 and tried to bring his country back under his control, but it was useless. In March 1917, he tried to use his guards to quell unrest in St. Petersburg, but he'd completely lost the loyalty of his men. He ordered them to fire upon the gathering crowds, and they refused, firing into the air instead. The very next day, several guard regiments in St. Petersburg mutinied against the Tsar. By the time the sun set, 60,000 guards had rebelled and taken key buildings across the city. The revolution had begun. Tsar Nicholas II formally abdicated the throne on March 15, 1917. In doing so, he brought over 3 centuries of uninterrupted rule by the House of Romanov to an end. In April 1918, the Bolsheviks moved the Romanovs to the city of Yekaterinburg, and this was where Tsar Nicholas II and his family met their chilling fate. While no one really cared about the Romanovs, that doesn't mean everyone was happy with the Bolsheviks. In June 1918, the revolt of the Czechoslovak Legion sent alarm bells ringing all throughout the new government, and it led to a wave of terror across Russia. The Bolsheviks started eliminating anyone they deemed a threat to their reign. Nicholas's brother, Grand Duke Michael, fell victim to the purge in June. It was only a matter of time before the rest of the family joined him. On July 16th, the Czechoslovak Legion was nearing the gates of Yekaterinburg. Rather than risk the royal family falling into someone else's hands, authorities in Moscow sent the order to eliminate them. The guards wasted no time. At 2 AM on July 17th, guards dragged the Romanovs out of their beds. They claimed the house was no longer safe and told the bleary-eyed family to head down to the basement. Tsar Nicholas II, his wife Alexandra, and their 5 children all entered into that basement in Yekaterinburg. Alexei, now 13 but still weak as a kitten, couldn't make it down the stairs himself, so his father had to carry him. Joining them were the family doctor and 3 of their loyal servants. The guards told the Romanovs they were to be executed. Then they opened fire on the family. When the firing stopped and the dust cleared, they realised the execution had gone horribly wrong. Nicholas, his wife and his son lay unmoving, but their 4 daughters were still alive. Each of them wore several pounds worth of diamonds sewn into their clothing. The stones had somewhat protected the girls from the bullets, but it only delayed the inevitable. The guards set upon them with bayonets before finally delivering the fatal blow. Now, the only thing left was to get rid of the bodies. After the execution, guards drove the Romanovs' remains out to a nearby mine shaft. They took everything of value from their bodies, then burned them, soaked them in acid, and tossed them into the abyss. It was a truly disturbing end for the House of Romanov, but in a way, they got lucky. Nicholas and his close family were already dead when Red Guards tossed them in that mineshaft. The remaining Romanovs met the same fate, but they were alive. If they didn't die on impact, they slowly starved, surrounded by the bodies of their loved ones. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe for more videos.